Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. So I sit here enjoying my morning coffee, talking to you lovely bonsai people. It's a pleasure, it always is. It's Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, which you obviously knew by now. And I do appreciate you tuning in to have a listen to what I've got to say about bonsai. So it's been an interesting week this week. It's been great, very enjoyable, lots of positive stuff to do with bonsai, and I wanted to share that with everybody that listens to the podcast about what to prepare for, especially for those people based near where I am. It's autumn where we are, and the weather's certainly changed in Melbourne, Australia. Down South Australia, it's southern part of Australia. It's getting cooler, and the trees are starting to head towards the dormancy period. So there's certain things we need to do or focus on or get ready for that I'll talk about in this podcast. Also had a listener, Steve, bring to my attention that you can learn bonsai now by AI, which is really scary. This AI stuff that's spreading over the world and taking control and growing at a rapid rate of knots does make my heart flutter a little bit, but it got me thinking, at least in some kind of a vein, well, you know, you can sort of learn things by AI, or you can use AI to get to a quicker point in time. You know, they use it for writing blogs, they use it for essays, they use it for information, building websites, lots of there's so many applications for it. But then it got me thinking about, you know, is that what bonsai is about for me? Is it just about styling or working a tree in a pot? And it's not. So I want to expand on that a little bit with the podcast as well. So should be an interesting one. Thanks for tuning back in. Thanks for listening as always, and stick around. Should be a good one. So now for a bit of a serious part of the podcast, I suppose, that it's been brought to my attention lately that my images are being used by people taken illegally from social media accounts and then being used to scam poor people out of their hard-earned money, saying that they're selling my trees. And obviously the people looking to buy them don't know that they're my trees, but the bonsai community is connected, and I'm getting a few messages come through about different places that have done it. So if you do see any of my trees coming through, on these scam sites and stuff like that, if you can just reach out to me, just let me know about it, because I can try and shut it down, because I just hate it. There's so much of this rubbish going on at the moment that if we can sort of bond together and maybe be a bit cautious about it, and I'll do whatever I can from my end to try and stop it from happening. Anyway, so that's it. Let's get on to it. So looking at the AI side of things and how you can learn bonsai from a computer seems just bloody absurd. But you can have a computer tell you how to care for your bonsai. So it got me thinking about, is bonsai about more than just a tree in a pot? And it is. It is one of the big things that I love out of doing bonsai, and I know that a lot of people get benefit from this as well, is mental well-being. Just being around trees, there's something about them. There's a presence, and whether it's walking through a forest or whether it's having a bonsai sit on a bench in front of you while you put your feet up and just stare at it, there's something about it that really does a lot for me, and it really, I don't know, you feel different, and if you know, like you're listening to it, you either got that feeling from them or you don't. But for me, mental well-being is a massive thing. That disconnection from whatever is a concern to focusing on something which isn't about ourselves, and touching something green, working on something green, and having a plan for the future for something is really, it's incredible. And linked to that is also the fact that every time I get to work on my bonsai, it's a bit of downtime. It's me time. I get to not engage with anyone else. Not that I don't like engaging with other people, but for me, it's just that solo time where you get to do nothing but exactly bonsai. And I think that someone that's a rock climber, a mountain climber, would enjoy the same sort of solitude where they get to disconnect from everything and do it themselves. I get it when I go running as well. It's just me. It's only me. I've got my AirPods in, listen to some tunes, and I get to focus just purely on nothing for a little bit. Get to disconnect and have that wind down, that downtime. Another part that I really like is that it's, as I said earlier, it's something more than me. And not that selfish isn't the right word, but the self-centered nature of people and focusing on us and our worries and what we do, it's sometimes, for me, really nice that I get to think about something other than me, which is my bonsai. And whether it's a quick 5-minute look over or it's a 20-second look over as I'm watering the thing, or, look for pests, look for bugs, look for whatever, see how a bud's sprouted, or if there's back budding on a branch, thinking, great, that long branch, yep, I'll get to cut that one off. And suddenly it's that whole disconnect. It's something more than me, and it's also that future plan, that future vision that I get to focus on, which I really enjoy. Another part that I really enjoy, which I talked about last time, is the artistic outlet, which I don't think can be underestimated how important that is. And like I said, put me in front of a canvas, it's stick figures, it's pathetic. Put me in front of a lump of clay, and I doubt I'd be able to do anything like some of the brilliant potters around the world can do, or any of the ceramicists that can make things out of nothing, out of a lump. And I'm sure that there's people look at us with our bonsai and go, well, how do you do that? That's an amazing skill. And I think that once you find that artistic outlet for yourself, you've got the horticultural side, you've got the artistic side. And once you can really delve into that artistic side of it, you can really enjoy it. You can use the technical side of it. I'm running wiring courses at the moment, and wiring's awesome because you can use that technique or that tool in our arsenal to make a tree stronger horticulturally by sharing the love with the sunshine and spreading branches. But it can very much so be used in an artistic sense, where we get to shape a tree to look exactly how we want it. And that's I talk about light bulb moments with bonsai, and it's when you first get the wire on a branch or on a tree, and then you start to move things around, and it's making my hair stand up on my arms right now talking about it, because honestly, I love it. Hand on heart, I really do. When you get to move a branch that's been sitting there and you've been visualizing, oh no, it's going to come down to this area here, and when I do that, I'm going to create this pad, and that foliage mass is going to get separated into 3 separate areas, and you can sort of start to build the design very, very quickly when you apply really good technique to doing it. So I find that for me, that artistic outlet that I get with my bonsai and other people's bonsai I get to work on is a massive driver for me. And I fail to see how a computer can put that into us. I fail to see how a computer or some being is able to tell us that if you wire your branch, then you will get like this, because that's what comes from within us as human beings. That artistic outlet cannot be replicated. But it can be mimicked, it can be reproduced, but it can't come from scratch. It can't, because there's no guidelines to how you bend the branch and where you position that branch. Because, as I always say, and this is one of the things that I don't delve into, being artistically critical of people. The artistic side is very personal. That's from within you. That can't come from anywhere else. And I think that that's what makes bonsai so exciting and so desirable for me, is that it is purely me being replicated into the form of what I want to look at within certain constraints of a tree. And I can make them beautiful within my own regard, but so can you guys, guys and girls. Anyone listening to this podcast can make their bonsai look however they want to make them happy and make them smile. That's never going to come from almost any other form of art, as far as I see, because it continues to grow and continues to develop and continues to change. So that artistic outlet isn't just used once and then it's extinguished. it's used over and over and over again. Every time you put that tree in front of you, you should have something. You know, it's this. It's the planning for the future always in what we do with our bonsai that, you know, combines the best of everything that we have to do with bonsai. It's the future artistic vision of that tree. You know, it's always about those steps that we take. It's not about getting there immediately now. It's about taking the right steps along the path to eventually get there. Or maybe you never get there. Maybe that's part of the beauty of bonsai, is that you keep working, you keep pushing, you keep striving, and it's never completely finished. There's always something to continue working with, which that's beautiful for a piece of art to be. It's a painting that never finishes. You know, how good would that be? That if that's your love, if that's your desire, then you just keep pushing harder and harder and harder. And you know, those little 1%ers that I talk about, you know, making things, you know, just that little bit better every time that you work on it. You keep pushing harder and harder and harder for an endless dream. It's a light in a tunnel that we never get to, but we get bloody close with it, and we get inch further and further and further. And your focus shouldn't be on then the bonsai never getting there and being dissatisfied. It's about the satisfaction you take with every step that you take with your bonsai. That's the most important part for me, anyway. And like I said, I don't think that you can ever underestimate that, and definitely that can't be given to you from a computer anyway. I take great satisfaction when I do hit targets, because I think planning and having a scale or an agenda with every one of my bonsais is really important. And I strongly suggest that everybody that does bonsai has targets in mind. Otherwise, you wander aimlessly and you never get satisfaction out of it. Because if it is an endless target, if it is something that never finishes, if it is something that's never complete, then you can sort of become very dissatisfied with it along the way, going, well, this thing's never finished. Like, how do I get there? And I think that having targets along the way, you know, it might be, all right, so I start to develop the apex. When the apex gets to this point, I'm going to reduce this sacrifice branch down. Or it could be, let's grow this branch, this bud into this area. When it gets to this thickness, I'm going to cut it back. And then when it gets cut back from that point, I'm going to start developing my secondary branches. All right, once secondary branches are done, let's start working on the tertiary stuff. Let's start getting the ramification right on this thing. And I think that if you can set easy, achievable targets along the way, then you'll definitely take satisfaction from working with your bonsai. Another thing which definitely cannot come from a computer is the friendship that you get, or the camaraderie, or the bonsai network that you develop. Those people that you see, the people that you talk to, the people that you meet along the way, that are so much part of this. You know, it's part of a team, effectively. You know, bonsai is very individual. It's put your blinkers on, it's about you. But, you know, you can share that with people. You can definitely, you know, bounce photos off people. They don't need to be your next door neighbour. They don't need to be someone that lives just down the road. They can be people anywhere around the world now. You know, you set up your bonsai network and you bounce photos to each other, and, you know, hey, what do you think of this? I've done this. Yeah, great. You know, it's a pat on the back. And this is where, you know, I think that it's really, really, really super important to be positive. You know, there's so easy to be negative with anything in life. You know, negative, I think, is the easy option, and positive possibly is not the easiest, but it's by far the best approach. So when you're part of a bonsai network, or when you're on a chat, or you're, you know, on a page or something like that, use your positivity to encourage and lift. You know, I'm never one to knock down and hold down. I'm always one underneath, pushing people up to say, yep, that's great. You know, look for it doesn't need to be perfect, but look for a positive and say, hey, what you've done here, that's really, really good. This part here could be improved, but that part is awesome. Like, you've done a really, really good job with that part. It's so easy to say to someone, no, that's shocking. That looks horrible. I would never have done that, but that's not the right thing to do. And I think that if you can use whatever position you have, and your voice and your mannerisms and your approach, to be that positive light to everyone involved with you in any shape of your life, but particularly with bonsai, then nurture it, grow it. Think of it like, when someone first starts bonsai, I think of it like a little seed that's put into the soil. And if I look after that, it's going to grow into a magnificent tree. It's going to be this thing that's going to survive forever. If I don't, and I don't water it, and I don't fertilise it, don't look after it, that's going to shrivel up and die in a really quick period of time, which means that person's bonsai light is going to be put out forever because of something that I have, or more importantly, haven't done. I haven't lifted them up. I've pushed them down. I've been negative with it. And I think that, the bonsai friendship and that encouragement is a massive part of bonsai for me. Upload a photo to one of these AI sites and get some positive feedback on it. What do you like about this? Oh, yeah, I really love that branch that's on the right-hand side. It really accentuates the movement of the tree. I don't think you're going to get that. The other part about bonsai is that I love is it's luckily a dream of mine's come true. It's now a job. A passion of mine has turned into a profession, which, I get to do things like this podcast. I get to do demonstration at bonsai clubs. I get to have workshops with people where I get to look at all different types of trees. I get to pass on as much skill and knowledge as I've got and really, be the glue that puts the pieces of the puzzle together for people to make their bonsai journey, their bonsai life that bit better and more satisfying and something where, as I talked about at the start, if for me, one of the most important parts of bonsai is mental well-being, then surely a certain number of people that I come across, it's going to be exactly the same thing. So if I can encourage that and do good and lift up and push and provide knowledge and strategies, then yeah, that helps me sleep at night. It certainly does. I love it. It's brilliant. I get to stoke the fire for a massive group of like-minded people in lots of different forms. This podcast is definitely one of those. From the feedback that I get, honest to God, I know I ramble on about it in every episode, but I do. I love it. It's really, really nice that I hear from people in every corner of the globe, and it doesn't need to be much. It's just, hey, love the podcast, really encourages me. Seriously, first thing I do is I race out and tell my family, hey, yeah, such and such from this part of the world just said they love the podcast. And my kids being kids, the biggest critics and supporters of family that you can ever have. They're like, are you kidding me? People in, Canada listen to your podcast. They want to hear you talking. They can't stand hearing me talk. And yet, this podcast does so much positive stuff. So I love it that I get to really be the catalyst sometimes for encouragement and building people up. And I take great satisfaction that I can make a difference and can help people. And I don't underestimate that. I really think that it's one of the most important roles that I have, to be a fire starter or the fan that continues the flame to grow in a lot of people and to look to keep it going. Because for me, I know in my past, when I first started bonsai, it was easy for that flame to go out. And it was so easy to see people at bonsai clubs and talk to people and have things pushed down where I'd go home from it and I'd go, oh, right, okay, maybe it's not as good as what I thought it was. Maybe it does need to be put into the bin, or maybe I just need to forget about it. Maybe I'm never going to be good enough to actually get to that point. Whereas I like it now that I get to fan the flame and go, no, let's look at the positives. Let's put this on the path and get a texter on a board and say, so here's where you are now. And imagine if somewhere down the track we had a plan for this thing and we had achievable goals along the way, and you got to this point with the tree, and it's like, hey, can I take a photo of that? And it's like, yep, done. You don't have to make this your target, but there's a potential in there to see the future. And when you've done bonsai for a long period of time, it is easier, and I hear this all the time. Oh, you can see where this is going to go, and you can make a judgment call to say that if I let this grow and then that happens and then this happens, this is going to be the end result. And it's like, Yeah, I can. And that's not a negative. Lean on me even more. So when you want guidance on things, or when you want, hey, I'm a bit stuck, I can't see the future, lean on people to say, what do you think? And this is where your bonsai network that I talked about ages ago in podcast becomes really, really important. It doesn't need to be me. It just needs to be like-minded people that are going to fan your bonsai flame to encourage you and make you never do what I did, which is put your scissors away in a cupboard and go, yep, that's it, I'm done with bonsai, because that's, bonsai is not about that. So while we're talking about tools getting put in cupboards, that's one part that I love about bonsai. I seriously love the look on a beginner's face when they walk in, and part of my introduction courses and my beginner's course is to talk about the bonsai tools. And you suddenly unfurl your tool roll, and there is a million tools in there. And then you get another tool roll out and go, well, these are ones that I use when I'm doing carving, or these are ones that I use when I'm doing big bends, or these are ones that and you unfurl them and their eyes just pop out and go, what? I thought it was just scissors and some wire cutters or something. It's like, no. So your basics are these three tools, which, for the majority of people, 95% of your bonsai life will be branch cutters, wire cutters, good scissors, and maybe some root shears for repotting somewhere down the track. But then you start throwing in all the other stuff that you've got, and I love it because I don't know whether it's just me or it's 99% of the people listening to this, that eventually your toolkit starts to grow, and it seems to grow sort of exponentially. You start off with the basics and go, yeah, that's enough. Then you look at it and go, okay, now I've got to do repotting. All right, so I've got to get root scissors. All right, so that'll get me through the first part of it. And I need pliers as well. All right, so I better get some bonsai pliers because they've got a nice little tip on them which allows me to get in close. All right, so now I need root cutters. All right, get some root cutters. And then next thing you're looking at it going, I've got a gin there. Geez, it'd be nice if I could carve that. All right, so I'm going to get a Dremel. I'm going to get a die grinder. I'm going to get some hand carving tools. All right, so if you do that, then you need to get a blowtorch to finish the wood off. Yeah, cool. All right, so I'm going to get that now. All right, so I've got all that. I can prune, I can repot, and I can start to do some deadwood stuff. Yeah, cool. All right, so that branch cutter that I've got, if I had a smaller one, I could cut smaller branches with it as opposed to using my scissors. Yeah, all right, so I'll get one of those, I'll put that in there. Righto, so if I've got the small and I've got the medium branch cutters, why not get a large branch cutter? Makes sense, doesn't it? All right, so those scissors that I've got, they sit in my hand quite nicely, but sometimes my fingers get a bit sore when I'm doing a lot of pruning, so I'll get ones with a bigger loop on them so more of my hand can fit in there. All right, so other scissors that I like are the ones that have got a small hole on them. The scissors all do the same thing. And your wire cutters, you need the small, medium and large. But like I said, I'm not saying this to take the mickey out of anyone that's got this, because I've got a chest of tools, excess tools that I've bought along the way because I love them. I seriously do. I love the knickknacks of bonsai, and that it's one of those hobbies that you can spend as little or as much in as you want, but I take great satisfaction that I know that when I'm working on a tree, I can have the exact tool for the exact cut that I want to make. I'm not compromising anywhere along the way. And when people come into my workshop and they've only got the three tools, it's like, well, here, try these, use these ones. And they're like, ooh, those little branch cutters, they're really nice, aren't they? And I said, yep. So every tool has got a purpose. You don't just buy things for the sake of having them. You buy them to use them, and you'll find that the more that you have, the more you use, and the more you'll want. Another thing that I get to, so I'm getting to wrap up this section, so don't worry, it's not going to go on too much more. But a couple other things I love. I get to travel now. We've all been through a period in time when things slowed down, and now that's gone. Whatever, that's we don't even use those words anymore, but that's gone. And because it is a job for me, I get to travel. I get asked to travel to different places and go and meet new people, and suddenly my bonsai network grows because I get to meet lovely people in different parts of Australia, and hopefully one day different parts of the world with it as well. And the bonsai world for me gets smaller and smaller all the time because travel's now a thing that we get to do. And it's not just the travel, it's the exposure to different bonsai and different, it's horses for courses. So certain bonsai grow really well in different climates. obviously, right? So I find that when I get to go to different places, it's like, okay, cool. Well, you show me what's your, what species goes nuts here? What doesn't stop growing? What do you guys have, one or two of in your collection, every single person in this room, and then from that I get to learn as well. I'm an open book. I'm a sponge. I like to take on as much as I possibly can, and traveling for me does that. I've been to one state a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to another state in a couple of weeks, and then a couple of weeks later I'm in another state of Australia, and it's just, I love it. My spreading the good word of bonsai gets to grow at a rapid rate, and I think that this whole uplifting thing is part of it. And the last thing that I could think of while I was thinking about AI taking over the world, and it's easy to look for a negative in it, but AI teaching you bonsai, and what else can't AI give me? And one of the most important parts of my day, the part that I love so much that bonsai gives me, it's my morning coffee. It's when I get my coffee and I get to go out there and walk around the yard. At the moment we got cooler air, so in the mornings it's a bit nippy. It's not cold yet by any stretch of the imagination, but it's certainly getting there. So I get to walk out there and hold my nice hot coffee in my hand, get a bit of dew off the grass onto my shoes, and I've got the steam coming off my coffee, and I get to walk around and look at my trees just for a couple of minutes. Just walk around, make sure everything's okay, make sure no possums have eaten anything overnight. But I get to, it's the best of everything for me. That morning coffee, it's don't get me wrong, I love my coffee, but it's a catalyst for me planning the future of my trees. It's looking at how my plans have been developing. I get to inspect my trees and have that solitude, that one-on-one time that I get just for myself, and I get to focus on something other than me. And the coffee is just the means to the end. So I love it that it's that reminder for me every day to, hey, you know what, disconnect, focus on this, start thinking about it. And then, one of the best parts for me with my morning coffee is being able to turn around and go, that tree there, that's next. That's the one that gets to go into the workshop and I get to spend my time on. Or, I get to start thinking about the future of where I'm going to end up with my design. So I don't think that any of those things could be the emotional side of bonsai is probably the most important part. The nuts and bolts, pruning, growth habits, that sort of stuff. Yep. Putting tree into a pot, cutting roots. Yep. No worries. A computer can tell me that any day of the week. But the other part that we love, that all of us listening to this podcast and me producing this podcast love, that's from within, and I'm not sure that we're going to get that from anywhere else ever. Righto, so I did a demo recently for one of our bonsai clubs here, the Bonsai Society of Victoria, which was awesome. But and I really liked it. Got to style a cedar and work on that, and put it on a path, which was lovely. I do really enjoy that side of what I get to do and get to talk to people. But one of the best parts that was that I have people come up and talk to me about this podcast and say I love it. I really love it. And one of the nicest parts is that I'm in Melbourne, in Victoria, Australia, and which I'm positive but a lot of what we talk about and a lot of what my focus is throughout the podcast is what's relevant to my yard, and that makes it relevant to other people around the local area, and hopefully people in northern hemisphere at places that have a similar climate to us. It might just be a nice reminder when the time's right, when your fall comes around, that things you certainly do. But for me, I love it that this podcast has a real local content to it as well, And part of what I want to talk about today is what to start planning for now, what I'm planning for in my yard, because it's autumn is a really busy time for me, and there's a lot to tick off and get done before dormancy, and so right now I thought I'd make a bit of a checklist for myself. And one of the big things that I've got coming up is my final autumn prune from deciduous. So it's important for me to make sure I get through. I focus back onto my deciduous, give them their final haircut before they head towards dormancy, while there's still a period of time that they can heal the cuts that I'm going to make on them. If I do it too late, then those cuts that I make will stay as open wounds throughout the dormancy period, and it's a really bad thing. So that's all happening now. Final prune from my deciduous. I've got to start making sure that I've got my wire in stock for shaping my trees, because it's about to come up to pine time for me, for my black pines, of which I've got quite a lot, and that always involves needle plucking, bud selection, but also wiring. So it's really important to make sure that I don't suddenly go, right, yep, I'm going to get into wiring now, and then look around and go, no, I've got no stock. I'm stuffed. I've got to go and race out now and get the stock. So I like to be prepared for these things. So that's one of the things. I've also got to make sure I've got a really good handle in it, because I don't know if you've ever wired pines with copper during winter once you've been doing your needle plucking and bud selection, but you tend to get this black coating all over your fingers of sap and copper dust, and it's an absolute bugger to get rid of. So I recently went out and bought a really good hand cleaner that's sitting in a bathroom that I'm prepared for what's about to come. Plus, I've taken the clean towel out of the bathroom. I put a rag in there because it just gets absolutely filthy. The other thing I've got to have is a good supply of Nurofen and Panadol, because I know that by the time I get through all this wiring that I have to do, my wrists tend to kill me. So, and my fingers start to hurt. So I've got to make sure I've got the painkillers. Another thing that I've got to start getting ready for is repotting season. Repotting season for me starts in about 3 months. So now's the time that I start planning for that and making sure that I've got all my components. Definitely don't leave it to the last minute, because it becomes a nightmare as everyone else out there is starting to hunt for this stuff as well. And it can be short supply at that stage. So I always tend to get onto that very early. Linked with that, pots. It's my last chance to hunt around and make sure I've got pots for what I need. I've got one of my beautiful black pines has cracked an antique Japanese pot, unfortunately. So I know that I've got to have a nice replacement pot for that. So it means hunting around, making sure I've got something suitable for that tree to go into, so it doesn't end up being in the workshop and then I go, that's right, I've broken that pot, I need to replace it, I haven't got anything, what do I do now? And then it slips into a second-rate pot for a couple of years, 2-3 year period, and I miss an opportunity to make that tree take another step in the right direction. One of the most important things that I'm doing at the moment with my morning coffee as I walk around is start to identify trees that need repotting. And that can be a flagging system, it can be just a mental note, it can be a physical note that I make to myself. But I am prone, with the number of trees that need to be repotted, of making the mistake of missing trees. And I hate it. I really hate it, because missing repotting means that next spring, next summer especially, is when I'm going to start having problems, when transpiration failure happens, because those roots are so compacted that I can't get water into the tree for it to uptake. It means that I'm going to start having issues with foliage burn and foliage dieback, and possibly branch dieback, or something a little bit more sinister happening, pest infestations, fungal issues, whatever. The whole strength of the tree starts to take a backward step. And it's all because I didn't identify a tree that needs to be repotted. So I use this time, while I've still got time up my sleeve, to go and identify the trees. And from that, I can make a mental note, okay, well, I've got, 200 trees to repot. How much soil mix am I going to need? How much do I need to make sure that I get in? Do those trees need their new pots? Yeah, okay, so how many pots do I need to purchase? Or do I need to transfer them around? Am I going to put something onto a slab this year? This is specifically one that I've been working with for years, that one tree I did a demo on changing potting angle, a big Scots pine. It was a YouTube thing eventually, but it was done via Zoom during the dark days a couple of years ago. And that tree got put into a temporary pot to allow for the root adjustment based on the angle change that I was making. And it's been 2 or 3 years now, 3 years I think, this year. So it must have been 2020 that I did it. That tree's now ready to go into something more significant. One of the comments that was made at the time was, I don't like the pot that it's gone into. Yeah, neither do I, but it's a transition pot. It's 3 years later. Part of my plan is to always put that onto a slab, get this tree so it's going to look really nice. onto a nice bit of stone. So I've got a nice bit of stone prepared for it. So now I've got to make sure that I've got the holes drilled for tie-in wires and drainage, and make sure I've got my muck to go around that. So it's going to be a big job. It's probably a close to a half day or a day's work coming up for me in the repotting time for my pines, which for me is August. So when that happens, I've got to make sure I've got everything ready to go, so I don't bring that tree in and go, oh, bugger, that's right, I was thinking about putting that onto a bit of stone, and I don't have the stone, I don't have the muck, I don't have this, I don't have that. So I'm going to make sure I've got everything ready to go, everything lined up months ahead of time, so I can put it on there and go, perfect. When it comes out at the other end, it's not going to be a surprise to me what's going to happen. It's going to be, you know what, my plan, the target that I've set for it, it's going to be achieved. The other thing that I'm working on heavily at the moment, being autumn, is fertilising. So make sure I've got enough fertiliser and tea bags in stock to do the job that I've got to do. Now I do, because my workshop absolutely stinks, because I've got these open bags of fertiliser in there. Someone reminded me the other day at a workshop that that's the smell of growth, and it is. But just make sure that you've got your Northern Hemisphere as well. Spring, if you're fertilising, then make sure that you're set ready to go. So it's applicable to you guys. And watering. Watering is one of the big things that I'm watching at the moment, and watering in particular as we head towards dormancy. There's rain during the day. Is there enough rain for that tree? Is it still in a growing phase? It's sucking away the nutrients at the moment, starting to stop from foliage growth and start to turn towards strength growth. Still got water flow through the system. It's starting to turn the dial down, and every tree is going to be slightly different. So you need to make sure that you're on top of the watering at this time. And pests. Pests are always on my mind at this moment. As whenever I find that there's foliage growth, which there always is at the start of autumn, then you get that succulent soft growth. Then you are going to have a pest issue. So for me, be on top with it. And it also gets harder spraying your trees, if that's what you choose to do in any form, whether it's chemical, natural, whatever it is. Then you've got to pick a window where you've got no rain coming. There's no point going out there spraying something and then an hour later you've got rain coming down and it's washed off. So it's time to be mindful that you need a couple of days window and make sure we plan for it. So I always make sure that I've got enough of whatever it is I'm going to use for my spraying in stock. So when I get that window, I'm not caught short by going, oh, I've got a couple of days dry now. Oh, I don't have whatever it is I'm going to spray. Now I've got to nick out and make it, go to the shop, buy it, whatever it is. I always make sure that it's always ready to go and I've got surplus in my stock. So that's basically what's happening around Bonsai Matsu during this period. So hopefully that helps sort of give people a bit of guidance. So that brings us to the end of this podcast. Thanks for sticking around. Hopefully it was informative for you and, maybe gave a little bit more of an insight as to where the love for bonsai comes from for me, which I'm sure is shared by a vast number of people that spend their time having me in their ears, which is great. So it's been a busy time for me lately. I've been focusing on extending my course offering through the knowledge database and really making sure that I can keep fanning those bonsai flames for a lot of people. So I do love life. I do love bonsai. And I do love the fact that I get to do this podcast once a week. And you'll notice that this is the 12th episode for the year already, and we're only in sort of March, April, so it's kicking along, which is great, and the consistency is there. And like I said, as always, if you need me for any guidance or any help or anything at all, please just reach out via the socials, and I'll do what I can. And take care, and make sure that you really focus on your bonsai over the next little period, because it is a really important time for our bonsai, whether you're in spring or whether you're in autumn. It's a super important time that you can really achieve some goals by focusing on what you're doing right now with your bonsai. So take care, and as always, until you next hear the dulcet tones of me saying, "Hi, it's Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and this is the Bonsai Stuff Podcast." Until then, happy bonsai!